Press the record button here. Okay, so we are back with John Russ. And so, John, what were we just talking about? All right, we're talking about these companies and really not understanding the risk. And we were getting a little bit into the compliance area. All right, so, when you talk about PCI and things of that nature, what is a small, a lot of these hospitality companies that are out there, how do they, do they have to, have X level of compliance for everything every time they're, pushing a credit card through?
They do, and in fact, when they sign their merchant agreements, they are actually signing up to be compliant with the entire PCI security standard. Huh. I've spoken to groups of small merchants, and they're rather surprised when they find out what their obligations actually are. The interesting part is what the reaction is. In a lot of cases, because ultimately responsibility is pushed down to the merchant, in many cases the reaction is going to be, well, if the fines and the penalties just get too much, bankruptcy, is going to be the solution. It's basically, their final option. Unfortunately, what this does for the banks and the other acquirers is it just serves to spread that risk then across all of their other merchants in terms of higher interchange fees and things like that. So it becomes sort of a vicious cycle. Really, the answer here is social hygiene. It really comes down to a very similar situation as was confronted by the public health services in places like New York City in the 1800s, when they were curing cholera. Instead of dealing with the individual patients, the way that it was finally defeated was to raise the overall level of sanitation within the city. Similarly, if you raise the overall level of security among all of the small and medium-sized businesses, you just raise that bar. Now you're going to reduce the number of breaches. You're going to reduce the number of cyber incidents, threats, thefts, and other things that are going on. You're also going to make it far less possible for a organization to be used as a launching point for attacking other organizations. The number of zombied computers that are out there that are in the various command and control networks that are used by certain cyber adversaries, the numbers run very, very high. Well, by improving our defenses against basic things like malware and things like that, we reduce the population of potential zombie slash bot armies that can be out there that can use to mount some of these massive denial of service attacks. So by improving the overall state of security at the grassroots level, where you have the greatest population of potential clients, which is in the SMB space, we can help raise the bar for the entire community.
Okay, we're looking at a lot of retailers out there, certainly in the small to medium-sized business space. Some of those retailers are the Subway shops, they're franchises. All the McDonald's out there are all franchised together, 5, 6, 18 stores sometimes. And these are the people that are taking thousands of transactions every single day. All right, they all need to be PCI compliant, huh?
Yes, they do.
All right.
And whether you own one McDonald's or one Shake Shack on the corner, it doesn't matter. When you sign that merchant agreement, you are signing up to be PCI compliant. Everybody who has their own merchant ID, that's where PCI compliance begins. And then another thing that many people are shocked to find out is any service provider that they use also needs to be able to be compliant, or they in turn may compromise the compliance of that merchant. For example, if I have a small business and I'm using a third party to support my IT infrastructure, configure my firewalls, manage my servers for me, etc., I'm responsible for making sure that that third party is administering any systems that touch credit cards in a manner that's compliant with the PCI security standard. If they don't, I'm endangering my own compliance. Now, there are ways to do that if there are organizations that are PCI compliant service provider organizations and things like that. But unfortunately, many small and medium businesses, because they're not aware of that factor, they're going to engage in a situation where, while it's operationally efficient, it's at the end of the day it could potentially compromise their compliance. And if they are breached and someone comes in forensically to do an examination and discover the circumstances around it, they could find themselves basically out of the safe harbor provisions, and that's a bit your business type of a situation.
All right, so it sounds like there's a lot of exposure out there for a number of companies that may not be so, how shall I say, aware, right, of,
Exactly.
what's going on in that
Right.
area.
Here's another interesting wrinkle. A lot of people will say, well, I'm not a merchant. I don't need to be cognizant of PCI.
Uh-huh.
And we found some very tragic examples of small companies that were out there where, say, an administrative assistant had all of the credit card numbers for his or her executives that they were supporting just to make travel arrangements. Well, that spreadsheet, in one case, was emailed to a home computer. The home computer was compromised, and those credit card numbers leaked out. Well, in the course of the investigation, it was discovered where those cards came from. That company was then required to be PCI compliant going forward because they had incurred a breach.
Wow. Okay.
So you can find yourself in that situation unwittingly.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, this is John Roston from Coalfire Systems, and John and Coalfire have certainly been a friend to us and supporter of us here at InfraGard in New York City. If you have an IT audit need or questions, hook John up and let him know what's going on. All right, give Coalfire Systems a call. John, once again, thanks for coming on to the program today, and we certainly do appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, great. All right, everybody. So we'll be back with you in just 1 second right after this. Next coming up on the program will be Keith O'Brien from Cisco Systems. We'll be dialing into him shortly. But in the meantime, we've got this message coming to you from our friends over at the FBI. All right, and here we go.
I am a mother.
I have a degree in electrical engineering.
I stopped the plans of terrorists.
I am a special agent with today's FBI. It's not the same world. It's not the same FBI. In defense of this great nation, our mission has expanded considerably. Join me. You'll gain the training, the support, and the resources to become one of America's finest. Today's FBI, it's for you.
And hello, everybody, and we are back once again. Let me just change the screen there. All right, we've got Thomas Smith coming up at the top of the hour at 7 o'clock, and Tom is from the New York State Office of Homeland Security, and he's the director of the Cybersecurity Office. So Tom will be coming up with us at 7 o'clock this evening. All right, we would like to see people active on the chat. All right, and if you've got questions or comments, and I see a few of them are coming in, do let us know, and, we'll do what we can. All right, so, speak up, and let's hear your comments, observations, and if you get some ideas, bring that out as well. We'll bring that up on the program. We're glad that each of you could have joined us tonight. We hope this program is going to be of value to each and every one of you. All right, coming up next is going to be Keith O'Brien. We're going to dial into him in just a few minutes. We did want to mention that on the 15th of February, we will have a domestic terrorism event, and that will be held at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. All right, we're not coming out with the agenda yet, but we do have a couple of very high-profile speakers. It's going to be probably a pretty short meeting, maybe a couple hours, 2 or 3 at most. All right, and it will be in the morning, February 15th. Write that down. The other thing which you should note is on March 14th, all right, we will have the findings of our cyber study. Later on this evening at 8 o'clock, you'll hear from Dr. Larry Powderman. And Larry will go through his study, what they're doing and how they're doing it and why it's important and all that kind of good stuff coming up as well. All right, so that's what's cooking in that particular area. All right, and let me see if I can get Keith on the line, and we'll set that up. Here we go. Okay, hang in there, and we've got Keith. Good evening, Keith. How are you?
How you doing, Joe? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Boy, great setup, huh? Well, what should we
Professional
expect from our friends at Cisco? Communication should be expert.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Hang on a second. Let me just get rid of my picture here because people don't need to see me twice. All
Okay.
right. And let me bring you into full view. There we go. All right, and now I can bring you into the program. There we go. All right, so on with us right now is Keith O'Brien. Just hang in there 1 second.